going inside the issues of our community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. After the riots of April 2001, a variety of community processes were set in motion. Most importantly, Cincinnati can, in the collaborative agreement under the auspices of the United States Department of Justice. One of the priorities that emerged from those processes was a commitment to community problem-oriented policing, CPOP. Elements of that program have been implemented in a variety of neighborhood situations. A few months ago, another element, the privately funded Community Police Partnering Center, opened in the headquarters of the Urban League on Reading Road in Avondale. I am joined this morning by Rick Biehl, who was named the first director of the Community Police Partnering Center. Rick served as a Cincinnati police officer for 25 years, rising to the position of assistant chief before his retirement earlier this year. And Herb Brown, the chairman of the board, the president of the board of the Partnering Center. Herb is the senior vice president for public relations of marketing and for Western Southern Life Insurance. Welcome to Rick and Herb. Welcome back to Newsmakers. This is an interesting appointment, Herb. Rick is coming out of the police department, assistant chief, a key decision maker in the department that you're trying to get better relationship in the community with. How did the Partnering Center end up choosing him as its first director?
Well, first I should say the stars were lined up right for us. We hired a search firm to do a national search. We were looking for someone with background in justice, and we wanted someone who could relate both to the police and to the community. We had over 70 applications. The search committee and the board interviewed 8 candidates, several from out of town. And as our search firm was doing its search and talking to people in the community about what they were doing and what we were looking for, one of the people they inquired to get information from was Assistant Police Chief Rick Biehl. And after that discussion, they came back to the search committee and suggested, we think you ought to interview him. So we interviewed Rick, and it was solid on the board, as well as all the members in the community who we talked with, was very positive that we should consider Rick.
Rick, this move from wearing the uniform to being in this other role, what sort of challenges does that pose for you?
Well, certainly one of the challenges is to be able to make connection with all segments of our Cincinnati community. But I feel very comfortable being able to do that because I have, with 25 plus years of public service and serving not only as a beat officer in virtually every district except one in the city, and also as a district commander, I had substantial contact with communities across the city and representatives from those communities at all levels, and always felt comfortable. I mean, that to me was what I loved most about what I did, was a community contact.
In the few months you've been on the job, this new job, for about 2 months, do you have people telling you things that are different than what you were hearing when you were wearing that uniform?
I think not differently, but with greater level of detail, just what the community's concerns are. I mean, it has been a great opportunity to get greater insight into what are the challenges facing communities, and that in some cases there is a challenge of relationship between the community and the police department that serves the community, and there's an interest in bridging that gap where that exists, that people really do want to have a good relationship with their Cincinnati police officers and really do want to work together with Cincinnati police to make for safer communities, or I call being co-producers of the safety in their community. So that has come through loud and clear in every community that I have been in.
Herb, the role of the Partnering Center over the months, over the years, the last couple of years, we've talked about CPOP in a variety of neighborhood situations where it's been tested and begun to be implemented. What's the role of this Partnering Center? What does this add to the process?
Well, Rick is responsible, will be responsible for a range of staff people, some called community outreach workers. And their job is to go out to the community, help the community come together with the police, and collectively get training in the SARE model, identify problems in their community, research the problem, analyze the problem, and develop appropriate responses, and then assess how they handle those problems.
You know, I wonder if there's two different kinds of concern that go on in the community about crime. There is the sort of if you're living in a city neighborhood, you experience the crime that happens in your neighborhood or you're aware of it. But then there are people who hear about crime on TV at night, read about it in the newspaper in the morning. Are those two different perspectives on crime, and are you really focusing on what affects people in neighborhoods?
Well, I think ultimately the impact of what we do would affect both of those perceptions, those who live there and those who may frequent the community because of employment, because of other economic opportunities, because of shopping, entertainment. I mean, there's reasons that individuals come to communities who don't reside there, and it's to hopefully create that perception and reality of safety, both for residents and those who would frequent the community. And those are real issues, particularly, I can tell you just in the past few months, the continued expression from, for instance, business owners about the need to have a safe downtown and how vital that is to the city as a whole. So the perception of safety of communities will very much, a very direct way, impact people's willingness to go to those communities for any of those reasons, for employment, for entertainment, shopping, to utilize businesses.
The models that you're trying to implement here in Cincinnati, are these models that they have been tested other places? Do they work other places? Do they change things? Or is this something that we're trying here, we're inventing something from scratch and we don't know whether this is going to have any impact or not?
It's not, in terms of problem solving, is not new. It is an emerging trend in policing over the last 20 years, but only for about the last 10 has it really been taking on with any level of earnestness by police agencies across the country. And still to this date, most major police agencies have not embraced problem solving as the primary strategy for addressing problems of crime and disorder. So from that sense, although not new, it has not evolved a lot on a major scale in terms of large agencies or large urban areas, although some have made efforts to do that. What is unique about Cincinnati is its emphasis on the community's role in the problem-solving process. It is possible to do what's called problem-oriented policing in the absence of citizen involvement. You can just do crime analysis. There's a great story on the news from Florida where two crime analysts were doing analysis of about 12 different bank robberies that had occurred within a region. And just through crime analysis, they predicted like a 67% that a bank in a certain area was going to be robbed on a Monday morning. So the two crime analysts, which normally aren't out on patrol, went and staked out the bank, and the bank robber showed up. That had no community involvement, yet it was very effective in terms of problem-solving method. So it can be done in the absence of community, but I don't think it's done well in the absence of community. Clearly, emphasis here and for the partnering center is to get the community significantly engaged as a true partner. Not just calling police, being what's called eyes and ears, but being a true partner in developing strategies to solve these problems.
It might be important to mention here that what we are not. We're not a police department. We will not monitor the police department. The police still have their traditional roles where any person in the community, whether they're visiting community or live there, can call the police for help. Our role is to help bridge and the community and the police communicate with each other and work on problems.
Is your role, to some extent, not only getting everybody together in meetings, but is it sometimes going to be to deliver hard news to both the police department that maybe they don't want to hear, and maybe also to community groups about changes that need to take place? Are you going to have to be the one who says, gee, if you want that to change, we've got to change this kind of behavior on either side of the equation?
I'll let Rick respond, but we're going to be in a position to facilitate those kinds of situations with our community outreach workers and the community. we would prefer that the community be the ones to say, working with the police, here are some issues that we think needs to be addressed. So we won't just come in and drop on top of the community our point of view, but we'll facilitate and work with the communities.
And I think what I would add to that is that what we will be bringing is a certain level of expertise about problem solving and what works and what doesn't, and that there are limitations. I mean, the research is plentiful about limitations of what enforcement can achieve. So if the belief is merely through enforcement we can achieve safer communities and need not explore other alternatives, in some cases those results are going to be minimal, if at all, in terms of improved benefit to the community.
The other things that have to happen being economic change, social change, broader-based background change, is that what you mean?
To some extent, yes, but this is much more focused in that there's three components of what they call the problem triangle or crime triangle. It's victim, offender, and location. All three have to be present or you don't have a crime. Most law enforcement, at least traditionally, most law enforcement approaches have been focused on the offender, not as much on victim behavior, which, depending how individuals act, I'll give you an example. I know that your lot out here as I come in is a posted sign indicating that it's under surveillance 24 hours a day. That's called a guardian. It's putting someone on notice. Mm-hmm. This physical space is monitored. Mm-hmm. That's one of the things you would look in terms of addressing the physical space. But even knowing that the space is monitored, I brought my cell phone with me and I locked my briefcase in the trunk, even though presumably it's a safe place. That's victim behavior. I'm minimizing the opportunity for me to be victimized. If there's something, not anything of obvious value in my vehicle, very unlikely that my vehicle will be broken into. Mm-hmm. So that's a victim behavior that needs to be altered. And then we talked just a little bit briefly about that location. What has been most neglected, really, throughout the country has been focused on what is it about this physical environment that makes it most likely crime will occur here. I'm not 2 blocks from here. There are environmental components that make this place, whatever it may be, a street corner or a business, vulnerable to crime or resistant to crime. So we need to look at those environmental components, and that's been neglected.
Herb, one of the points from a board member's perspective, I think people need to hear this. This whole partnering center is privately funded. This is not a government agency. Where is this funding coming from and how much money is really involved?
It's an important message. The funding is private. Our funding has come through a funders collaborative called Better Together Cincinnati. And it is funding that's been provided through various sources within our community, from businesses and individuals. It's administered by the Greater Cincinnati Foundation. So they provide us with a funding of our budget of about $1 million plus. I don't remember exactly how much more. I think $1.4 million, Rick. And we don't have any intentions at the moment of receiving government dollars. We think it ought to be privately funded, and it gives us a little more freedom than to have to respond to the government bureaucratic process sometimes. Not all bureaucratic, but it happens.
Well, we're out of time for this morning, but good luck on this. Good luck with your transition. And as you move into this and you get some concrete things moving, I want to have you back on to talk about, because this is a very important change in the way things are happening. So good luck.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you for having us.
Stay tuned. After the break, a look at a social service agency that has served the community for 125 years.
I have the highest respect for the social service community in general, and family service in particular. I know what they've changed the whole legacy of my family.
My job is to care and love for these children no matter what, all the time.
3 years ago, Family Service started Friends of the Children in Cincinnati.
The theory behind Friends is really, if you start with children at an early age and give them that one person who is constant, loving support unconditionally for 12 years, that you can really make a proactive difference in their lives.
Welcome back. What we know today as Family Service was founded 125 years ago in 1879 as Associated Charities. Over the last few months, I had the privilege of working with Family Service to develop their history. Here's an excerpt from a documentary video we produced together. The narrator is Nancy James. In those early years, Associated Charities sent friendly visitors, a few paid, most of them were volunteer women, into the dirty alleys and tenements all over the basin. Associated Charities always was opposed to just giving people alms. The long-term goal was always to help people find meaningful jobs, to gain some self-sufficiency and some self-respect. In the short run, they created programs that put men to work splitting firewood and women to work weaving rag rugs. Associated Charities even created the Providence Savings Plan. Struggling families were encouraged to deposit their nickels and dimes and quarters with the agency. Families kept track of their savings with stamps that could be redeemed at any time, but without any interest.
One thing I've learned is to feel very proud of our history. In reading about how we treated individuals and families, always with dignity, with respect, with an aim towards self-sufficiency.
Around World War I, a major change swept through social work. The traditional friendly, learn-on-the-job visitor was challenged by the new university-trained caseworker.
It's a very different concept than just talking off the top of your head or just being a nice, loving person. Because if you understand personality and you're taught to do that, you can be extremely helpful to families.
In the 1920s, Associated Charities embraced the new ideas, sending some employees away for training. The class notes of 2 students of casework survive. But not until the hiring of Anna Budd Ware in 1930 was the identity and mission of the agency transformed.
Once I built a tower, now it's done, brother.
But nothing could have prepared Associated Charities for the Great Depression of the 1930s. Jean Leach, who began working for Associated Charities in 1933, remembers overwhelming challenge.
I worked with 200 families who lived on the side of Mount Adams. And I used to ride up to the top in the incline and then walk down, work with the families who lived on the streets down that hill. And I would go to almost every house. I mean, there were that many people who were needing help.
She also worked with families living in the tenements on Republic Street.
The apartments usually had 2 or 3 rooms, but no private baths. The baths were in the hall. Usually they were overcrowded because families usually had more children than they do today. I mean, some of them were very good housekeepers and some of them were very good cooks. They cared about things very much. And you could see how much they wanted their families to thrive and get along.
It's so difficult for me to imagine the agency during the years of the Depression. When you think about the size of our budget, which I think was over $600,000, when you think about the number of employees, over 100, and you think, how did a private agency do the work of government?
In fact, only when the federal government stepped in after 1935 to create the Public Welfare Department, which Family Service helped staff until it got up and running, could the suffering begin to be addressed. Freed of the responsibility to handle relief, Associated Charities redefined its mission to focus on helping families address the challenges of family life. The organization marked this shift in 1945 by changing the name of the agency to Family Service.
I am joined now by Arlene Herman, the president of Family Service, and Barbara Manuel, the director of Family Service's newest program, Friends of the Children. Welcome to Newsmakers.
Thank you.
And obviously we've been working together for a long time, so welcome to Newsmakers. Welcome to my world rather than being in your world. Arlene, at this point, we've taken a look at the history of Family Service a little bit here. What does Family Service do today? What's the bread and butter organization do today?
Well, we continue to help strengthen families and work with children in managing the challenges of daily life. So that work never goes out of business. We do it through a variety of programs, both in the Northern Kentucky area and in the Cincinnati area. Some of our programs are based in schools. Some you'll hear more about, Friends of the Children. Certainly we have a mental health counseling that's accredited, International Family Resource Center. The programs become the way to strengthen families. I like to think we're also working in the community, partnering to help solve some of the community's most challenging social problems. And that's where many of our school-based services partner with other groups as well.
Barbara, one of the things that you're responsible for, or the thing that you're specifically responsible for now, is this Friends of the Children. And we saw at the beginning of this segment, we saw a little bit of a footage of a day that we spent with you out at Diamond Oaks with some of the children in some classes and things with the horses, which was great. What is that program? Because that's a very innovative program.
Right. Friends of the Children is a prevention program new to Cincinnati, excuse me, but unique in that its aim is to get children.
Well, it's taking children from a very early age, right?
Right.
Where do you pick children up?
We start with at kindergarten with children, and we make a promise to work with them through high school. So the children, Friends of the Children is there to team adult mentors with 80 children who are vulnerable in the greater Cincinnati area.
Yeah, and one of the things here, two things that really strike me. One, you're identifying children who you have determined are seriously at risk when they're kindergartners.
That's right.
I mean, it's hard to imagine that young. And secondly, when you're saying you're teaming them with mentors, these are not volunteers.
No.
These are professionals, right?
Absolutely. They're professionals from the community who are teamed with the children, who make a commitment to serve the children. And this
is their job. They're being paid for this.
This is their paid job. That's where we are different than other mentoring programs. We make a promise to work with the children. These are full-time paid staff.
How is this program different or similar to the other things that you run?
Well, I like to think it's a continuum of care. This happens to be a prevention program. We're also working with children who are really severely emotionally disturbed. One of our programs in Kentucky. You got to work the gambit in today's time. The neat thing about Friends of the Children is that it's preventative, and it's partnering with Hamilton County Job and Family Services to say these kids are going to cost taxpayers a lot more money if we don't have interventions early on. In fact, it's the first grade teachers who identify the kids. It's sad to say this, but it's the kids who they feel will have no future without an early intervention and prevention program. This particular program comes out of Oregon, and there's 11 chapters across the country.
And right now there are 80 children in this particular
that we're
program.
Working with. Absolutely.
You know, one of the things that, you know, you've been around for 125 years, not you personally, but the agency has been around for 125 years. What we mean by family has changed a lot in 125 years. How does that affect your work?
Family is really that support system that a person has, because one of the most stressful elements in a person's life is social isolation. And you can no longer think of a family as mom and dad and 2 children, because we now have elderly people who are alone, who need families. So we strengthen families through working with a support system. We don't fix people. That's what makes us a little bit different. We know what it feels like in terms of the loneliness and not having that support system. So families have definitely changed. When you studied our history, we saw many, many pictures where there were expectations of mom and dad, and those were really reflective of the times. And I think now with the women in the workforce, dad staying home, we reflect the times as well.
Barbara, you've been in social work a long time. You've been with Friends of the Children not that long, and we have only about 45 seconds left here. But how is this program different than what you've normally been able to work with?
I worked a long time with abused and neglected children who are at the other end of the spectrum. Friends of the Children works with children before problems get to be serious. So this is a prevention program, and that's how Friends is most different than other social service agencies. And that we make a promise to stay with the children, not to end the service when children move, when they change schools. It's a long-term commitment.
That is a big commitment.
Absolutely.
Congratulations on your 125th anniversary, and thanks for being here this morning. And we're going to end with a little bit more. And thank you for making Local 12 Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. We leave you this morning with the conclusion of that video history of family service.
And the difference with family service is we strengthen the family as well as work with individual children. And I think that makes us very unique. And families want to be successful. And I think I saw that throughout our history and our present. Parents want their children to succeed in school. They look to agencies like Family Service and they say, help us. We want what you want. We're there as partners. You know, at times I think, wouldn't it be nice if our work was done? But I think both our past, our present, and our future says it. We will be there to strengthen families. And I think we will be there empowering people to get through those difficult and challenging times.